everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Sorry it has been so long since the last video. I tried to take my own advice, and it turns out that I needed more time than I expected to rest and recover and to get my bearings and find a way forward where I wouldn't be in a state of activation. Because I feel like that was one of the very hard things to grapple with at first, is immediately I wanted to do everything. I wanted to get involved and get plugged in and find a game plan and get prepared and do all this stuff. And I found myself getting into this mode of fear and frustration and activation that was making me very black and white in my thinking, to the extent that I lost myself a little bit. And I feel like this is, for me specifically, the challenge and the superpower is that I cease to be Mira when I get activated like that, because the things that I used most of my life to feel safe, those were a masculine coding that was not true to me. And so as I started doing this, I started feeling less and less like myself, and then I'd get more afraid, right? Because I'd feel myself slipping away, so I'd be more afraid that somebody else would take it from me. My identity was starting to get very not fractured, but it felt very tenuous. Like there wasn't going to be a way forward for me to continue being as myself in the world if I didn't do the exact right things, which is horribly ironic, because that's what prevented me from being Mira in the first place, is this thought that I had to do the exact right things, right? So I spent a lot of time after that realization, and after I got kind of everything together that I needed to as far as practicals, making sure my name change was fully in order, making sure I had a backstock of estrogen. There's a lot of practical concerns for us as trans women, especially, to make sure that things are able to be changed before they can't be changed, essentially. So I did all that, and then I rested. And that was so necessary, because what that brought me back to wasn't just letting go of that binary thinking and that activated thinking, but it brought me back into an embodiment, brought me back into myself. So it brought me back into the present moment to see the people around me, which allowed me to help others a little more in some cases. But more than that too, it brought me back to a sense of joy. And I want to be careful when I talk about this, because I'm not talking about disregarding what's in the world, or just like a base level happiness, because don't get me wrong, like I'm not exactly happy right now. But there is something deeper that we can tap into if we allow the process of rest to come all the way through. A true rest is going to bring us out into a restored sense of the joy of life. And what I mean by that is being able to see the beauty of the individual moments. You know, like today, this morning, it was foggy when I woke up, and it just felt magical. Magical to the point where I didn't even put on my music, because I just wanted to experience the fog. And really, when it comes down to it, that's what we're afraid of, right? We're afraid that there's not going to be room anymore for us to actually experience life. We're afraid that these restrictions, these regimes, these oppressions will make life scarce for us in a way that we can't feel and live the abundance of life, that we are going to be robbed of our capacity to live life to the fullest. And so when we go against the grain and allow ourselves to have just a moment to, or more moments, right, depending on the context, whatever is needed, to breathe and to allow ourselves to be in the moment, we are reclaiming what is trying to be taken from us. And not only that, is we are living in a way that the people that are trying to take it from us are incapable of living in their present state. So the radical thing about that is what that does is when we have that joy, it gives us an opportunity to show a different way. It gives us an inroads for bridging gaps and connections, because if we remain hyperactivated and we go into those situations where somebody else is hyperactivated, they will only see us as an enemy, right? If we try to wage some sort of bloody revolution because of the injustices that we see, we're going to be seen as the ones that are trying to bring about an oppressive regime, or the ones that are going to try to destroy everybody's way of living. So the only way really to ensure that that doesn't happen for us is to hold on to this different way of doing activism. And what I mean by that is, if you look at January 6th, it's a void, right? It's this spot where it was a day where people felt so activated, so angry, so stuck in what they perceived was the only way forward, that they were ready to destroy institutions, ready to exclude people, ready to harm people, actually, in a lot of different ways. And not even aware that that's what they're doing. And I think that that's what's key. And so when we come across this anniversary of January 6th, we can say, hey, well, let's not make this one about that, about a lack. Let's make it about a vision of something bigger. And so what I've been trying to do today is not to ignore that it's January 6th. I want to sit with all that. But my way of sitting with it is to hold it, to hold the sadness of that, hold the sadness of what's coming, and then also very much be sure to take time to listen to some music, to dance a little bit, to enjoy whatever momentary weather is passing through, to look at the life around me, to look at the connections with people around me, and really cherish those and love those. Because what we're going to be up against is not really a force in and of itself. It's an absence of abundance of life. It's an absence of a belief that living free is possible even. It's a belief that you have to restrict people, otherwise they are going to hurt you. Otherwise they are going to destroy everything. And the horrible and sad irony of that is, by adopting that mindset, you become the one that is destroying everything, that is stopping people from living free, that is that is making the lack happen in the world. And we can't let ourselves be that, right? Or a better way to put it, and this is where we've got to be intentional about our language, right? Is rather than saying we can't, we deserve and we want to step into something more abundant than that, something more hopeful than that. And what that takes is recognizing hope for what it is. Hope is this interesting place between optimism and despair. And I think it's where joy lies. And what I mean by that is, when you're an eternal optimist, you just think everything's going to go fine, so you're not active in the world. And when you're an eternal pessimist, you think everything's going to go wrong, so you're not active in the world. But when you see both sides of that, it creates a tremendous force of for what you hope will happen, that you hope the good might come forth, but it's never guaranteed. And even though it's never guaranteed, you can also choose through courage to live as though it is something that's coming. And that sort of choosing into where you live as though it already exists is a very different approach to the injustices in the world. It's not disregarding them, and I want to be clear with that. It's very different than that. We're not doing some sort of spiritual bypassing or hyper individualism, just worry about yourself kind of stuff. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm hoping for that we can sort of nurture is this way of being joyful activists and allowing our passions and our wonder and our sense of beauty, our sense of exuberance and embodiment and connection to be our guiding force for where we take action. So, for me, for instance, I got connected with a friend through the through a Palestinian protest, and he is Syrian, and we've connected because he has a lot of context for Middle Eastern history, and I don't have much access to that. Even though my father's father is from Baghdad. And what that's allowed for is this really wonderful relationship where I just ask him questions a bunch and hear him talk. And I'm excited about it, right? Like, I am not just appeasing him because I think I should be listening to him. I am fascinated. I feel connected to a whole different part of my lineage. I feel enthralled by some of the different cultures and customs, and also the complicated nuances of the religious undertones, and I've been having fun sort of grappling with that and sort of coming to new understandings of how to understand somebody from a different context of me. And so this friendship is formed. And because of that, I had a context to know how important the fall of the Assad regime was just a couple weeks ago, and how important it is that Syria is free, and how unlikely that is, but also how much work is to be done, and how difficult it is right now because of current political context. So what that led me to was to recognize, I really am on fire for this now. I am excited and hopeful for what Syria could become. And so I want to take part. I want to let my representatives know. So I signed a petition to get rid of economic sanctions. And that was out of exuberance, out of a joy, out of excitement, and out of a hope, right? So it wasn't a guarantee, but it was a hope. And so I guess my hope for us is that that's how this would work, is that we can run through different ways, and we can start to get really granular about different ways to hold on to that positive aspect of doing activism, that we sort of go with our passions, go with our desires, go with where we're plugged in, the context that we understand, because a lot of this is going to affect everything, right? So, like, for me, obviously, the gender lens is going to be really huge. I'm gonna have a pulse to the ground on all that stuff. But I'm also really hopeful because I do see ways that the people around me are oppressed by the gender that was handed to them, and the ways that if we can find a way past some of these oppressive stereotypes that are causing these laws, particularly with trans issues, it means a lot of freedom for a lot more people. It means liberation for even the very people that are enacting the laws. And that's exciting and that's empowering. Whereas if I were to look at that in like, I've got to do this, this, and that so that I will not be destroyed, so that they won't come for me, so that I can still live my life free, that is scary, and that's activating, and it's no way to live. And how tragic would it be if I fight so hard for my right to live free in abundance that I am so activated all the time that I never get to live that life. None of this is ever going to be fully resolved. There's not going to be that one magical day where there's no more weird legislature where we never have to look at it again. Everything is self-running. It's always going to be in process because things change, and our understandings change, and our contexts change, and so we're always going to have a bit of a fight, so to speak. So if we can't live now as if the better world is already here, then we're never going to be able to. And we can do that while we're resisting. We can do that while we're taking action. And in fact, I think that's the only way we're going to make lasting change. If I look at the most successful movements of the past, that's where they were. There was a grit, there was a persistence, but there was also a joy. And it's the joy that I think we want to center on. So it is going to take the rest, like how we kind of just did, for a month and a half, maybe even more than that. Hopefully it won't always take that long. But the other side to that is to come out of that rest, come out of that regrounding in the self and looking to where what brings the joy, and to dive into that deeper and looking where maybe joy is missing, looking to where there's a void, where there's a lack, and injecting the joy into that. So all that to say, I guess I'm giving homework. And the first homework, which I know sounds crazy, I know, because like we've only got like 2 weeks, and I know that that can be terrifying. But just remember, like, the end of the world isn't happening in 2 weeks. There will be things that we're going to have to deal with and try to figure out by those day one legislations. It is going to be a hard path that we have forward, but because we can't know what's coming, we can't prepare for it in the granular details. What we can do is we can prepare ourselves so that we can be resilient no matter what shows up. And that's kind of the key here. And so the homework is not to get involved in an organization, nothing like that. Like, I mean, please do if you want to, or if you already have, don't like back off or anything. Like, follow what makes sense for you there. But I trust any of you listening that you know what to do with that. The homework is actually to just find a moment of joy through the next couple days, especially in those times and those places where we're told that we're not supposed to, where we've got to be serious, where we've got to be focused, and whether that's at work or whether that's with conversations about January 6th, whether that's with a friend or family member that you disagree with politically, whether that's with, like, I don't know, taking care of finances, like whatever it is, to inject some joy, to some whimsy, some laughter, and not as like a forced thing, obviously, but maybe as more of a way of like grounded in the trust that that is what's going to create a lasting change, and we get to do that now. So it's almost like a empowering yourself, but it's empowering yourself through joy. So for me right now, it's looking outside and seeing these beautiful little raindrops on my car window, and getting excited about the fact that I have a clean camper at home for the first time in months, because I finally cleaned it. And that's really joyful to me. And it just feels so good and so grounding. And that's the kind of stuff we're going to need, is those little things. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the resistance and the self-care is not separate. I think that's where we usually get into trouble, is when we think of self-care as a pulling back and it going into ourselves, and we forget the context around us. Or also when we see the context around us so much that we start to forget about ourselves and our own bodies and their own needs. This is embodied activism at its core. It's joyful activism at its core. It's pleasure activism at its core. If you need any books on that, let me know. But I think I'll leave it there. Just if you can, find the little ways of joy in whatever works for you. And I'd love to hear how it is you're doing that. Thank you for listening this long. I know it's like 18 minutes, but I really appreciate that. And feel free to add any comments. Feel free to add any insights. And I will be back soon, because I think that there's more to be said on all this stuff. And I think we'll just keep going down the direction until we get into something really new and radical that can make some real change. I'm excited. Yeah.